order. Legislative Committee on of the Water Management District on February 22nd today. The three members of the committee are present: Director Paul, Director Edwards, and myself. And Dave, I think you just said there are no members of the public on, or nobody on the board on.
Well, we've got two now. So one is Chris from DC, Chris Kearney, and one. Okay, so yeah, they're all popping on right now. Yeah, so we've got three of our DC, and we've got John representing JEA, and there's Lori. So yeah, they're all here now.
But no members of the public, as I'm gathering.
No actual public, right? They're all of our consultants.
Well, I'll go through the motion of asking for public comment on the agenda, and I'm sure there's going to be no hands up. So, but I'll if members of the public come on, whether you alert me to that or not, I will still go through the motions.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're back in order at the committee level. The action items are two. One is to approve the minutes of September 22nd. I have a question on that, but maybe I'll ask the question first. There was a from the JEA Associates about SB 330. And that was a housing related bill of sorts, affordable somewhere. So very confusing, I thought. But did that pass? Did that get signed by the governor? I read some opposition to that was really screwy.
Yeah, so SB 330 was 2019, and it was signed into law in October of 2019. That's the Housing Crisis Act of 2019. Okay. So that informs a little bit of what our water for housing activities have been.
Well, I saw some reference to Senator Skinner.
Yeah, she was the principal author.
Was there another SB 330 last year, or is this not this year? We don't have anything listed for this year.
Correct, nothing this year. It's just so last year we started this initiative to see if we can free up some water, and then it all got bogged down with legislatures focus on COVID relief and then the lack of activity during Thanksgiving and Christmas. So it's the same SB 330 from 2019 that was in the memo that JEA produced. There's some discussion about the CDO condition 2 in housing.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
Okay, this is just for the minutes. So are there any committee questions about the minutes? Otherwise,
I have one.
Okay.
On the second page under number 3, it's there's a reference to the Problem Solvers Caucus proposal for funds in the COVID relief packet that would have money for special districts. Did that make it into the bill?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, they're still trying, and they're back at it in the state as well. Special Districts Association is looking for support for state relief for special districts.
I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the minutes, and then I want to ask a question about just procedures around minutes in general. But
yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please. Joelle?
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Paul,
Aye.
Director Edwards.
Aye.
All right.
Before going to the next item, I just as a closing response, a question on just handling minutes in general, and this goes to any committee. When we have questions on the minutes of something that was in the minutes, is it appropriate to go down that rabbit hole about clarifying and saying so on, or should that be a subject matter we bring up later?
If you don't mind, I'll handle that. It depends on the scope of the question and the response. If it's simply a question for clarity or to remind you and the public as to what it is that we're talking about, then that That would be de minimis. If it's going to take more than 3 sentences to explain, if we're going to do it for more than 2 minutes, then you're having a discussion onto itself, and the public hasn't really been notified that you're going to have that discussion. You are transcending the minutes. It should go on for a future item.
Okay, well, thanks for that.
The court has been very, very clear, with respect to minutes, but with respect to boards that have gone down that path when public comment has raised an item. And just because a member of the public may raise an item with passion, you can ask a question to clarify. But if you're really going to start talking about the item itself, the court has told us that the public is not on fair notice that discussion was going to take place.
And just because it's in the minutes doesn't mean that's public notice of a discussion.
That's correct,
Yeah.
because the discussion was in the past. Somebody could go back and listen to that tape, but you're asking for something that's beyond that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the second action item is the calendar of our committee going forward this calendar year. Any discussion on that item? And I'll also ask if the public does, please show your hand. But meantime, we'll just go to the committee discussion.
So I'd just like to point out that the Tuesday, November 23rd is the week of Thanksgiving. And maybe we'll still meet, but I'm just calling that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to be reminded. If there are no other questions, we could entertain a motion to approve the calendar.
Move approval.
Second,
Second, roll call, please, Joelle.
Director Riley,
Aye.
Director Pa,
aye.
and Director Edwards.
Aye.
Thank you on that. Passes to nothing. Okay, we're now into discussion items. So again, there will
Yeah,
be no,
Yeah, go
pardon.
ahead. Sorry, George.
I'm sorry. There'll be no action on any of these items, although there may be suggestions on follow-up from staff or that kind of thing. But anyway, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Stolt.
Yeah, so Joelle, if you would bring John Arriaga and Lori Johnson in as panelists, we'll let them touch on the highlights of their memo, which was the first attachment, and then we can talk a little bit about bill tracking and some other things. So.
Are we
Yeah.
ready to start now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for this opportunity. I think Karen, Director Paul, I think we have not worked with you on this committee before, so welcome. And
Nice to meet you.
I know George and Alvin, we've been working together for some time now. So we are at the beginning of the new 2-year session, which began in early January. And it's very much a continuation of last year with the whole COVID-19. We're still dealing very much like this on Zoom, and expect to probably be doing this for the better part of this session, which makes it very difficult on our end, and I guess the legislators as well, to conduct a lot of your meetings that you'd normally just drop by their office and meet and chat with their staff and so forth, dealing at a distance like this. But nevertheless, there's a lot on their hands and on our hands as far as issues following last year with COVID-19. There's been quite the first part of January was dealing with some emergency issues, such as the whole moratorium on housing that, they needed to fix before the end of January, or else there were going to be a whole lot more people out in the street. That was dealt with through an extension, and the current extension now carries on till about June of this year, June 30th of this year. So that was dealt with. The governor and the legislature is very much involved these days in trying to get kids back into school. You've seen almost on a daily basis the situation we are here in California with getting the vaccines out and so forth, and moving that along. So a lot going on. I guess on the upside though is, though we are in a recession, the economy has been acting better than what I think a lot of people anticipated. And over the years of Jerry Brown, we were able to build up reserves, that have been very helpful over this last year and this year. so that we aren't as in bad a shape as we could be. Still waiting for dollars to flow in at the federal level. With this new administration, we're expecting to see more of that happen. So on the range, at least for this year, things are still moving along, and people are optimistic, I'd say. So with that, from a legislative standpoint, this again being the beginning of a new 2-year session, there's a lot of bills that have been being introduced since early December. Now we're late February. This past Friday was a deadline for bill introduction. So now we're in the process of drilling through all the bills that are there and reporting to you what we think is of importance to you. I think with David Stolt, we have a really good working relationship, so that as these bills come in, we're talking on a regular basis. In addition to our work with Aqua, the Water Association that we work closely with. In fact, this morning we participated in their weekly lobbyist conference calls. It's virtual conference calls. We're going over the bills that have been introduced and beginning to get some of that underway. They've got some bills that they are sponsoring. There's other bills that bond type bills that are of utmost importance to all of us. So that's a general overall picture of where we're at today. Things that, like I said, are just really beginning. The governor did introduce his proposed budget early January, which is now being gone through they're going over it with the subcommittees, the budget subcommittees. And we expect they will be doing that probably for the next month or two. Unless you have any questions, that's just a general opening. Lori's going to get into a little more detail as far as some of the bond issues and bills that we know of so far that we think are important to you. So with that, Lori, I'll turn it over to you. You're on mute.
Yep, I'm on mute. So as John said, the legislature is back. They've been working on a number of issues. As he mentioned, the moratorium, the housing moratorium, with that came $2.6 billion in federal funding to attempt to try to remediate some of the landlords' withheld rent, but also some of that money, and we're looking a little bit closer into this because it's kind of out in the open, is some of that is to assist with utilities and paying back what has some individuals have not been financially contributing to. So that there are some discussions with Aqua and some of the municipal utilities about where that funding is going to go. But as far as the legislature, COVID has not slowed them down. We got about 2,500 bills that have been introduced. And kind of what we projected in September is coming to fruition. We're in a new day and age, but and I'll touch a little bit in a couple minutes, is the climate change and infrastructure, that they are moving full ahead with that. Not tremendous amount in terms of water, but there is a tremendous amount in wildfire mitigation and funding and land clearing that we'll be watching extremely close. And of course, we're in a new dawn and age where we're doing these Zoom calls. So there is a lot of bills on how local agencies, local governments, and kind of weaving in with the Brown Act, how we're going to move forward on some of these issues. I'm sure most of you heard that there's a bill introduced that all meetings from here on forth will have a Zoom option. And there's some legal issues around that. So we'll be looking at a lot of the housekeeping stuff, but really we want to focus this year as kind of the missed opportunities, and no fault by ourselves or anyone, on a larger climate infrastructure water bill. This started in 2019 and never kind of got its bearings, and was reintroduced last year, and the governor proposed it in his budget. We were all wide-eyed and naive come January 10th of 2020. And then they tried to revive a couple smaller bonds last legislative sessions, but just really did not take off. So this year we have two of the big ones that the Senate is driving. One is SB 5 by the pro tem leader, Senator Atkins, and SB 45 by Senator Portantino. And that's the one Aqua is really focusing on. And then we have one in this assembly, AB 1500, and the Republicans are even jumping on board, and they introduced their own climate measure. So with what we're doing is we're continuing our work that we've done with Aqua and essentially participating and actively participating and submitting our comments, both verbally and written, on the priorities that they're going to have in these budgets in this pool, like where the money is going to go to, whether it's going to be going to dams, how much is going to be going to SGM, etc. So we will be picking up, working with Aqua on these measures. They are coming up for hearing, but again, these are kind of shells of a bill that they want to move forward. And again, these are bills that are going to move forward to be placed on the 2022 ballot. One interesting one is, and it doesn't have a lot to do with water, but they do want our input on is Assembly Member Robert Rivas. As you know, he is the new chair of the Assembly Agricultural Committee, and he is doing a climate ag bond that's between $2 to $3 billion, and it's a broad undertaking that they're doing. They're trying to do everything from sustainable ag and healthy soils and watershed to wildfire mitigation, as far as prescribed burnings, to addressing food insecurity, to incentives for manufacturing and ag, to kind of fill the gaps where we saw in this COVID, where dairy farms were pouring out milk and farmers were getting rid of food, that there is some more of a partnership and incentivizing the ag community to give back to a lot of growing number of people that are food insecure, and also delving into food banks. But there is, aside from being our local legislator and, kind of needing to know, he absolutely wants to get our input on some of the water provisions that they are going to move forward with. And this is just in concept right now. Again, it's a big undertaking, and they don't have language. So that will be a kind of an ongoing thing, and a partnership and relationship development that is absolutely crucial. He is proven to be a friend of MPWMD, and we, anytime he needs his help, we will definitely do that. So those are kind of like the big global money bond measures, and I'm hearing a lot of other things are going to be coming out, but they're really going to be tied to climate and wildfire, and that's kind of how they're gauging it. So as far as the climate and the bond issues, does anyone have any questions?
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. You said that Aqua is focused mainly on SB 45 of the two, and can you tell us why that is, and are there things of interest to us in both of these measures?
In its shell work, yes, there is a lot of interest in these bills as far as the funding pools and whatnot. I know that they have not had formal meetings. SB 45, these two measures, this is a couple years in the making. So it's kind of old language that there were discussions, so they see it a little more as cooked. But the Assembly has their own version, and they're basically, what we're having to do, Karen, is come back and pick up and have these discussions. Where we ended with our funding priorities, and I will get those to you, is essentially, breaking up the pots of fund, trying to have it, the governor wanted it very broad, Aqua wants it very prescribed, but again, loose applicability to these programs. So I guess where we're at is we're 2 years ahead, but it's kind of like time stopped. So they're going to start putting together their bond coalition calls within the next 2 weeks. So we'll have a better idea of where they're gauging this. They see this as, kind of a long negotiation between working with the Assembly and the Senate, but they do see SB 45 as the Senate vehicle. And just from experience, I think the Senate moves a little more efficiently than the Assembly. This is going to change tremendously. But the governor's office has been quiet on this thus far, but we expect them to start interjecting on any bond measure that is going to be passing this year. So we've done a lot of work, but we are still a work in progress, and we're kind of all just picking up where we left off last March 13th.
I have a question, Lori or John. When you talk about infrastructure, whether it's water or sewer, doesn't matter, even roadways, is the direction to replace old, or is there a priority for kind of planned retreat from the coastline? Is that a key piece of the infrastructure part of it? Because I think that's the climate change issue a lot of us are facing.
Oh yeah, there are a tremendous amount of bills dealing with the coastline, but when you say planned retreat from the coastline, what do you mean, George?
Well, I mean, if some infrastructure pipelines, interties, whatever, that are right close to the coastline that could get inundated, 20 years from now, that just takes a planned retreat of that infrastructure. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, that is their idea. Is one, I think what the past couple of years and what's going on in Texas is that we have aged infrastructure. And I know in some of our discussions, they were talking about using a chunk of money for under the flood protection funding pot for dams. And this is not to build a new dam. This is basically, and it's not O&M, but it is kind of what you're talking about, that this is an environmental climate disaster, potential disaster that they are trying to offset. So my understanding from how the general outline talks are going, that yes, this would be in there. It is under a climate. Again, these infrastructures, it's not the water bond, it's not, Prop 1. This is going under climate, wildfire, safe water. They're trying to put everything in there. But if any infrastructure project dealing with water has, climate implications and avoidance of some type of environmental calamity, then yes, that would fall under that.
I heard John Laird give a presentation on Saturday. He's putting in a fire bill as well. So anyway, he's also representing our area. Of course, you all know that, but
oh yeah,
he's a good friend. So follow his legislative proposals.
Well, and I hear he has some experience with natural resources.
That's what I heard.
But yes, and as John said, the legislature, the deadline ended. The legislative track that you have in front of you, that is up, that is not completely representative of everything. On Friday, they introduced well over 600 bills that I'm sifting through. And in terms of legislation and of what I've seen so far, and again, there are more bills. What I've seen so far is there's direct impacts of how you guys conduct your meetings and whatnot. There are some water bills that we will need to take a further look at, that I'll need to get some background information before bringing it back to the committee. But a lot of how we do this is through our partnerships, and we have had long, good standing relationships with Aqua, as well as other utilities and the Water Mutual Association, and where they come to us and they ask us to sign on to a coalition bill for thought. And they have asked us to sign on to one, which I will go across in one sec. But also, we get a lot of requests from Senator Laird or Assemblymember Rivas or other regional legislators to sign on to the bill. We pride ourselves on being informative resources to them, but good partners. So, 41 bills in the ledge track so far. I could probably guarantee to add another 25 of those. And then we'll probably take positions on about 8 to 10, and then also some budget issues when things start to move closer and we get May revises released. So, the active legislative bill positions is a year-long process that we do go through. So,
It'll be a better position that our May meeting will have gone through all of them. But
I was about to
so
ask-
the one.
Go ahead, Karen.
Well, I just, this is my first a meeting of this committee. So can you tell me what has the process been for determining positions on bills? How do you arrive at that? How have you arrived at that?
yeah, so it changed a little bit in the last 2 years. Initially, when I got here, it was if any of our agencies, so ACWA, California Special Districts Association, or at the request of our consultants, because they kind of know how the districts work. But in recent years, we've actually brought the bill tracker to you, highlighted specific bills we feel at the staff or the consultant level that the district should be taking a position on, flag those positions, and then over the course of the year, we're already we've previewed them all, and so we can immediately jump on a letter of support or a support if amended, or whatever the position can be. So that's our May LegCom meeting will be one where we'll try to really round out the bill tracker. If there's anything in advance of that needs a sudden signature, then we'll either reach out to the committee or measure whether it's controversial or not.
So I have one other question, Dave. Maybe you can help me craft it if I'm off base here. The Seaside Groundwater Basin is being threatened with seawater intrusion and overdrafting in general. And if there's sea level rise, of course, that's the risk is increased. But might there be any kind of legislative issues that might be able to address that in some fashion? Because I just don't know how I would. I don't think it's simply seawater intrusion. It's a water supply. It's a reservoir problem, and I just didn't know how, where, and then I'll stop talking.
Yeah, well, because it's adjudicated, I suspect there is not a legislative fix. However, as has been talked about, the impact of sea level rise would raise the gradient or the head to the disfavor of the freshwater supply. So there might be some pockets of money or something in some of these climate change bills. But generally speaking, yeah, we haven't seen legislation that is easily kind of cut and pasted into an adjudicated basin.
Okay, I have a few more questions in general, but Alvin, do you have something you want to add at all?
No, I think you.
Go ahead, sorry.
About the basin, I think you covered that. So no questions.
Laura, you want to add some more?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to get this committee's thoughts. This is an ACWA sponsored bill that we have been asked to join in coalition. It is authored by Senator Caballero, which basically creates a 120-day statute of limitations for water and sewer rates. And it is on your legislative track. It is on page 10. And they have, again, asked for our support.
Can you explain that a little more about what is this deadline?
Essentially, it provides public agency water and service rates the same protections that are already afforded to fees and charges, which is the 120-day statutes that fund other essential governmental services. It also gives member agencies like yourselves more financial certainty by helping to prevent costly and time-consuming litigation, challenging rates and charges years after they've been adopted and collected. So basically, this is giving you a little bit more protection that you're not out in the open, and it's putting the water and sewer rates at 120 day.
What does the 120 days apply to? Is this,
The increase in water and sewer rates.
so there's 120 days for the district or utility to implement a rate increase from the time of decision? Or does this address a problem of back billing?
I think this is a matter of proceedings. So let me get into this. Existing law requires specified fees, including water and sewer connection fees. Any judicial action or proceeding to attack, review, set aside, void, or annul an ordinance, resolution, or motion adopting a new fee or service charge or modifying an existing fee to be commenced within 120 days effective of the date of the ordinance, resolution, or motion. This bill would apply the same judicial action procedure and timelines as stated above to ordinances, resolutions, and motions adopting, modifying, or amending water or sewer fees or charges.
Yeah, I read it. It wasn't so easy to parse.
So essentially, it's affording, it sounds like it is affording more legal protections for water agencies from legal challenges of new fees and charges that are going on that they cannot come back years after.
Okay.
This is not COVID related, right? This is kind of administrative procedure.
Yeah. Sure looks administrative, yeah.
Yeah, I in the conversations during our Aqua calls, I have not heard anything COVID related on that.
So will this affect CalAm? Or just public agencies?
Public
Like Berea
agencies,
Coast?
yeah.
Go ahead, Dave, I didn't hear you.
It looks like it's public agencies, so it's a local agency levying a fee. It may have an impact on some of the fees that we currently adopt, giving them the same legal protections as water and sewer connection fees or rates and charges. But then obviously, if we head down the path of acquiring CalAm, then it will 100% affect us.
So Dave, we can get a hold of Senator Caballero's office and talk to her, get more details about that.
Yeah.
She's pretty amenable to your concerns, as she always has been.
Oh, yeah. I mean, both. So for the benefit of the group, for example, Robert Rivas Assembly District is 30 and doesn't really cover any of our jurisdiction, but he's got some of the infrastructure that affects Pure Water Monterey. And as we talked about earlier, he's got to build it. Affects workforce housing or farm worker housing. And so Mike McCullough, who's on the line from Monterey One Water, is more likely to be affected. But we've included Rivas in all of the activities related to Pure Water Monterey and has become pretty much a friend. Ana Caballero, who's the senator who's sponsoring this, kind of the same situation. That was her assembly district earlier. And she's become a supporter of Pure Water, and we have a very good relationship. So a lot of times, if they ask for support and we look at it, we'll provide a letter of support as a courtesy, even if it does not have a direct impact. And so we've done that on a couple of occasions. Most recently, last year was the Anderson Dam rebuild, which is, up by Gilroy, but has the potential, if there was a dam failure, to flood into parts of the 152 corridor in Monterey County. But this support of this Caballero bill would be just simply at this point a courtesy, because I don't foresee much impact. But if they're asking for that support now, then I think this group right now would just need to signal that, yeah, we can sign on with the coalition in supporting this bill.
I see a hand up from Rebecca Bliss. Is that
Yeah,
a
and she's going to be joining us shortly, but yeah, if she's got a question now, let's hear it.
Must have had my hand up by accident, so I'm sorry. about that.
So Dave, can we find out how Monterey One, Marina Coast, how they feel about the bill before we sign on?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just feel more comfortable. I don't want them thinking we're trying to step on them by jumping ahead of them.
Right. Well, I would assume
They the
Monterey
one got the
Water-
rate bait.
Yeah, and I would assume Monterey One Water would like to support it as well, but don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I want to spin off of that comment from Director Edwards for a second. It seems to me that we, since we're kind of a small agency, would do much better in whatever we're doing legislatively if we're doing it in partnership and in cooperation with others. And so this goes back to Alvin's point that if we can be in partnership, then I would hope that becomes even a stronger signal, but a stronger, message to carry too. And it's a good message if we're in partnership.
Yeah, and I guess you should know that we kind of act as the, we've done more to coalesce our federal delegation than County Water Resources Agency has, or Marina Coast Water District. And I'd say that Monterey One Water has gotten pretty darn good at it, but they're our partner on pretty much most of this. So, and they're inclined to support. I just got a text from Mike, who's on the call. They're inclined to support it. But Marina Coast Water District, right before Keith Vandermountain left, was actually somewhat surprised at how much effort we had put into the Title 16 and WIN grant process. And we've offered that up to County Water Resources Agency and others when there's something that we're aware of that more likely affects them than it affects us. We try to be the good neighbor.
That's good to hear. I'm glad we're doing it that way. Any other comments from the committee? I'm also asking the public, if there's any public out there, raise your hand or show yourself somehow, and you'll get recognized.
I have another question.
Well, and I was going to say, as we go into another question, Joelle, as we're getting ready to move to the next item, you could bring in Chris Kearney, Rebecca Bliss, Roger Gwynn, and Stephanie Missert. But we can go ahead and field Karen's question while that's happening.
It's a question about one of the Rivas bills, AB 252. So that's on page 2 of the tracking document. What is land repurposing? What does that mean?
So are you on the, which one?
Land
Village Hall.
repurposing. What does that refer to?
Finding grants.
AB
Give me
250.
1 second.
It's called
Yeah.
Multi-Benefit Land Repurposing Incentive Program. What is that? Repurposing how? Repurposing what? Land?
Oh, 1 moment.
See, all these bills have just gotten thrown against the wall in the last week or two. So not all of them have their
analysis,
the analysis.
Yeah, I'm gonna look through the bill language really quick, because they usually under definitions, they'll have a definition of what
Maybe
repurposing.
it's too early if they just landed and people haven't had a chance to study them yet and read the definitions and all of that. We can find out later. That's okay.
Yeah, my quick take is maybe it doesn't take a rezoning if you're converting farmed land into a floodplain. It may not be a zoning issue, but it may be a repurposing.
That's what I'm reading. But the one great thing is, as Dave Stoll was talking about, we have a great relationship with Rivas. I'll reach out to his staff and get, again, most of these bills do not have fact sheets yet or analyses, but have a conversation, and I will send an email out to Dave to send to the legislative committee.
Thank you. Of course, once these are all in the system, we can look them up ourselves and
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and again, there's going to be a lot more. This is your track that was sent out for the purpose of getting it out was cut probably 3 days before the bill deadline, and that's when they do the big dump. So there'll be a lot more.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and as you begin to read this particular bill, it's, you know, it's all about compliance with SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And so chances are, if you have land that is currently a pumper and it needs to be repurposed to lie fallow, then perhaps this will provide economic incentives for the loss of the agricultural
Oh,
revenue from the same property. So it does look like that's where it's headed,
oh,
to minimize the
Mhm.
dislocation in rural economies.
okay.
So
Thank you.
before going to the federal reps, can I go back to the last comment of the staff report on condition 2 housing? I understand condition 2 kind of related to the CDO, but is this the same condition 2?
Yeah, it's the same. So all the water demand work that we've done, there is a draft letter that's probably going to get circulated tomorrow to Dave Laredo and some folks. That's in effect the ask for the State Water Board. So that, yeah, it's the same condition too, the CDO's condition.
Okay. So any more questions on the state side of the legislative agenda? Okay, Dave, can we go to the next section? Thank you both, John and Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I see that Roger and his team are on the panel now at this point. Where'd Chris go? Oh, Chris is up there by I guess they're alphabetical by first name. All right, there you go. So yeah, Roger, you want to take us in?
I'd be glad to. Yeah, appreciate being with you this afternoon. With me today are Chris Kearney, Stephanie Mazurt, and Rebecca Bliss. And just going to give you, give you a brief overview of where things stand here in DC these days. And we'll start with just a review of the election outcomes and the 2021 appropriations and FY22 budget appropriations and budget process, where they are. The FY 2021 Water Smart activity and WINAC funding update, and cover some of the water infrastructure bills that went through at the end of last year, end of the session, and then briefly touch on some of the priorities for 2021 and just a Biden administration update. And to get started, I'll just kick it over to Stephanie Mazurt.
Now, did you have a couple of slides, Roger, that you wanted us to put up?
Yeah, we have a little PowerPoint. We can, Joel, if you can share that, or if you would like us to do that, how would you like that, Dave?
Either way. I mean, who's got it? Stephanie's got it, or you've got it, Roger?
I have it up, but actually, let me see if I can share my screen.
And I can do it if you can.
I think right here.
Okay, you're gonna go.
There you go.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So first of all, it's nice to meet you all and see your faces. I'm Stephanie Mazurt. I'm a principal with the Ferguson Group, and I'm going to go through the first few slides here, and then I will hand it over to Roger. So just a very broad overview of the landscape of what's going on in DC. We obviously have a very different situation in 2021. We have President Biden in the White House, and we also have a Democratic majority in the Senate and in the House. So the dynamics are very different than they have been for the past few years. And the margins in the House and the Senate are very close. So in the House, there's only 6 votes difference between the majority and the minority. So it's definitely makes a difference in the strategy of how the majority moves bills through and which bills move through. which is important to keep in mind. And the Senate is actually a 50-50 split. This is only the third time in American history that this has happened. The last time was in 2001, and a power sharing agreement was created between Democrats and Republicans to make sure that the business of the Senate could be carried out in an efficient manner. And essentially, the power sharing agreement creates an even playing field between Democrats and Republicans, especially on a committee level. So there's the same number of members on each committee. Normally, the majority party would have more members on the committee than the minority, but it's equal. And so is the staffing and resources are also equal. So it's definitely a very unique dynamic that's going on in the Senate. And Vice President Harris is the tiebreaker vote when there is a 50-50 tie on a vote. So it's definitely going to be a unique at least 2 years before the next elections and however those go. We're just going to go over really quickly the status of the budget process. So in December, Congress passed the FY 2021 budget. It was several months late. Normally, the budget should be approved on September 1st, but it was ultimately became law on December 27th. We'll talk a little bit more about some specific funding levels in the FY 2021 budget. But before we go there, we just want to make you aware that President Biden will be putting together his own budget proposal, which presidents do every year. But because this is a new administration, his budget is going to be a little late, which is typical for a new administration. Normally, we would see the budget proposal in February, but we're looking at a skinny budget proposal in March, and the full budget proposal likely sometime in May. Now, the president's budget proposal is kind of dead on arrival a lot of times in Congress. Congress puts together the actual budget, but because you have friendly majorities in the Senate and the House, could make more of a difference this year than you would in a typical year. So we're going to talk a little bit about some funding that was approved in the FY 2021 budget in December. And we're going to start with WaterSmart, which is a funding account that Monterey has pretty consistently supported. And there are a few reasons for that. And I know Roger's going to talk about that a little bit, but you can see on the slide here, hopefully I don't have okay. You can see on the slide here, there's a few bullet points listed under WaterSmart. Those are the sub-accounts of the larger WaterSmart program, just so you kind of know what the landscape is here. It's a little confusing. WaterSmart is numerous other programs, including the Water and Energy Conservation Grants Program. That's a program that Monterey has a specific project that would fit. That's something that Monterey could go after for a project. You would expect that funding, that $55 million in funding to be available for competition sometime in the middle of this year. And then there are a couple other accounts here, basin studies. Monterey has a basin study. They've received funding for that. So that's not as important of an account. But I'm going to turn it over to Roger to talk about Title 16 and the WIN Act funding that's listed here under the bullet points.
Yeah, and before we go there, just for the benefit of the group, WaterSmart, there was a WaterSmart grant early on in the planning process of Pure Water Monterey. We, the district and Monterey One Water and the County Water Resources Agency are participating in the basin study, for which I believe we're getting about $900,000 of grant monies. And then we also competed for and received funding for a drought contingency plan. And that's all in addition to or separate from the Title 16 WIN Act money that Roger's going to touch on.
Good, thank
Just
you.
so the committee members are aware too, it's you're pretty unique having received both the basin study and a drought contingency plan award. So there aren't many, if any, jurisdictions or water agencies around the country, around the West that have done that, have received those, both of those. In terms of Title 16 and the WIN Act funding, we were working hard last year to make sure that the funding that Pure Water Monterey or funding that is needed for the Pure Water Monterey groundwater replenishment project was received. This is kind of a strange process. It was put in place when earmarks went away in 2011, and basically what it required is that the secretary make a determination that make a request to Congress that funding be allocated to particular projects, and then the Congress, on its side, include the projects in the Energy and Water Appropriations Bill before the funding could be released. The Pure Water Monterey groundwater replenishment project has received funding in the past, but there was a big block of funding that was waiting and pending for FY 21 process. And we were very lucky. You were very lucky to receive an allocation of $15.49 or $15,498,000 for that project. It's basically 39% of the $40 billion that was approved, and so we were certainly very happy about that. In addition to that, in the FY21 appropriations bill, of interest to the district, the Corps of Engineers received funding for $25 million to launch the Core WIFIA program, which is a water infrastructure financing program. Basically gives water agencies access to low-cost long-term financing. This is in addition to a similar program set up by EPA. And the difference here is the Corps program is going to be focused on ecosystem restoration, flood-related flood protection, and things of that sort, whereas the EPA program is principally focused on traditional wastewater, water supply, water reuse sorts of projects. Stephanie, you want to go to the next slide? So in addition, at the end of the year, Congress approved the larger entire omnibus appropriations bill, which included within it a number of water bills, including a Water Resources Development Act, which is a large biannual Corps of Engineers authorization bill. Water Smart program, again, was addressed in this legislation from an authorizing perspective. They broadened participation and improve the cost share under the Water Smart program. They've added natural infrastructure projects as a eligible use of Water Smart programs. And again, added in non-governmental organizations as an eligible recipient of those funds. Also included in the end of the year package was an additional authorization for a new program of the Bureau of Reclamation for aquatic ecosystem restoration. And basically, it's a relatively minimal amount of money, West-wide, $15 million. But we're hoping in the context of the infrastructure package that we'll be able to build on that, and more money will be made available there. And again, that can help support some of the ecosystem restoration priorities, for the district. You want to go to the, let's see, in terms of the FY20 or calendar year 21 priorities, just wanted to mention that certainly everybody we're working and looking at right now, certainly the COVID relief package, which is making its way through Congress. We're expecting that will be approved in fairly short order, hopefully here by mid-March. There's still quite a ways to go, though, as you can imagine, with a $1.9 trillion package, but as being proposed. but certainly there's, we're expecting that bill to move forward and provide significant additional funding for local governments, a general allocation of funds for local governments to help offset losses of revenue and things of that sort. And we're also expecting that it will include additional utilities related rent relief, which was talked about by the state advocates, and that we're expecting more money to be put into that pot and others that would be a benefit to utilities. From a federal infrastructure package, that's going to be the next package after this relief package. And there is certainly growing concern being expressed by a number of folks about the idea of an additional increment of funding on top of a $1.9 trillion package or thereabouts. And but nonetheless, we're expecting that there will be a federal infrastructure package. The size and scope of it is not clear at this point, certainly, but I think there in general is continues to be wide bipartisan support for some level of additional infrastructure assistance. A couple of things that will be of interest, just generally, certainly additional funding for water infrastructure on a broad basis. Certainly, coastal climate resiliency was mentioned earlier. Retreating from the coastlines and things of that sort, but just for climate resiliency purposes in terms of public infrastructure, making investments there, we certainly expect that to be a focus. We're also it certainly is under consideration as an expansion of water reuse assistance like you have received to date. That assistance is capped at $20 million per project, per approved project. And Congress is considering increasing that cap to $30 million. We're also expecting additional funding for environmental restoration, as I mentioned. I mean, there's a $15 million annual allocation in the end of the year spending package for FY21. This package is likely to include much more. The House has approved a bill that last year approved a bill that is sort of the starting point for this whole effort. That was $150 million for these aquatic ecosystem restoration related improvements. We're expecting something similar to that in this next package. Regulatory streamlining will continue to get some attention. There's one bill that the district's been interested in the past, which is the Fish Act, which would transfer regulatory control of anadromous fish from National Marine Fisheries Service, NOAA, to the Department of Interior. That has been reintroduced this year. We don't expect that, though, to frankly make it, be seriously considered in the coming months here in this Congress. But it's regulatory streamlining is certainly going to get attention, but don't expect that particular piece of legislation to move forward. Other changes that are occurring for 2021, the current calendar year, and for the FY22 process is we're expecting earmarks to return, congressionally directed spending, locally directed projects, however you want to talk about it, but you're expecting earmarks to return. That'll create another opportunity for the district to pursue funding for your priorities, water infrastructure and fishery priorities. Everything here, like at the state level, is focused on virtual. The Capitol is not open really, for any sort of visitors. Most of the staff is working remotely, and we're expecting that our interaction with folks on the Hill will continue, and on the agencies will continue to be on a virtual basis. As the things get settled in with the determination of the direction of the infrastructure package, we'll certainly be working with the district, with you, to identify times when you can interact with the folks on the Hill. And we got new congressional staff. We got certainly new administration officials that we will want to introduce you to. On the cabinet nominations, just a quick update there. 7 of the 35 cabinet nominations have been, or folks that need Senate confirmation have been, or have been approved. The 3 that we've listed here, Secretary of the Interior, Secretary of Agriculture, and EPA Administrator are among the 26 that are awaiting confirmation. Representative Holland is having her nomination hearing this week. And so that process is starting to move along. Below, we've just listed a couple of the folks that are in the that have been nominated for various positions that we expect to be in senior positions within the Department of Interior. Just want to point out in particular, Tanya Trujillo and Camille Touton are the folks that we're very close to, that have been around for quite a long time, and Camille in particular is deputy commissioner. The way that the Biden administration is pursuing these folks, they're putting him in the deputy role, but the expectation is that they will be nominated for the principal role, which they are serving as a deputy currently. And for example, Camille, we're expecting that she will be nominated as commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation. She's currently serving as deputy commissioner and able to act in that role, but but we're again expecting her to be nominated officially as the commissioner here soon after Representative Holland is is confirmed as the Secretary of Interior. So with that, we'd just be happy, to answer any questions. I'll just point out too, we do have provided the district with a grants tracker, and this will be updated, and we'll actually update it following this meeting. One bill was recently introduced by Senator Garamendi that deals with the special districts issues you talked about earlier, and to expand the availability of direct assistance to special districts from the COVID relief package. And so we'll be adding to that and adding any other pieces of legislation that are part that you identify for us to track. But that, to give you a sense of it, at the end of the last session, I think that tracker was some 20 some odd pages. So I think, we've got an abbreviated list for you, and we'll be updating it on a regular basis going forward. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. So.
Thank you, Roger. Roger, any opportunities to get to know Alex Padilla's staff?
No, absolutely. We're very fortunate that Joaquin Esquivel is coming over from Senator Feinstein's office, and he was legislative director for Feinstein, and is coming over to in a similar position for Padilla. So Senator Padilla has not named a water staffer yet, and so they have indicated that they do plan to hire someone to principally deal with water-related issues. He is on the Environment and Public Works Committee, which would be it's very important, certainly from handles that covers EPA, Corps of Engineers. So we will, as soon as that person is nominated, we'd like to absolutely set up a meeting with you and get to know those folks.
Yeah, and just to make sure I didn't mishear you, did you say Joaquin Esquivel?
Right, or it's Joshua, actually. Excuse me, not Joaquin. Joaquin's on the state board.
Okay, yeah.
Joshua, I apologize. Yes, Joshua Esquivel.
Okay.
And apologize, yeah. But but anyway.
Well, because Joaquin did do, he was with
Boxer. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So, no, it just would have been shocking because he's.
No, thank you for the correction. Yes, no, thank you.
Just want to make sure I'm keeping in the right loop.
Yes.
And we did distribute via email, probably during the meeting, the 2020 advocacy piece that the Ferguson Group put out. That's just to show the new members kind of some of the things that Ferguson Group's done with us. They're also the source of the weekly legislative link that I send to all the directors fairly regularly. And I may miss a week or two during a year, but so yeah, great. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Dave, can I ask a little bit of a general question? When there's some reference, maybe just in the minutes, whatever, about going to Washington or some national conference, does the board members who make those trips, are they generally focused on kind of policy related activities, or do they get far more detail that into specific grant ideas?
It depends, you know, so we spent better part of 18 months or 2 years doing a lot of the policy oriented, both Senate and House committee staffers, but also, you know, like John Watts and Feinstein's office with respect to the WIN grant opportunities and things like that, visits to the Department of Interior folks. And that was a period of time when we were pushing really hard to get smarter about getting money. We have had a couple of visits to Silver Springs, Maryland to deal with fish people. There's been a little bit of turnover in that office, so it's almost like starting new every time. But when we do the annual legislative conference, there's 2 weeks a year where everybody and their brother shows up in DC from California. One is that week of Aqua's legislative, I think it's a 3-day, 2.5 day. That same week is the California Association of Sanitation Agencies. And so everybody who's in water or wastewater shows up. And so it's really hard to get meaningful meetings when every, you know, delegation with 3 board members wants to meet their legislative delegation. The second one is kind of a National Water Reuse Association, water reuse, and you know, a whole variety of others. That's their big fly-in. I can't remember when that is. It might be May. Those are difficult times to get productive work done, but they're always good opportunities just to be seen and get face time. And it's both face time with staff and legislators, but also face time with other Aqua folks, so to speak, or water reuse folks or whoever they are. But we found it most effective to show up in an off period like you know, early October, when we've got specific intent. Easier to get the meetings. The meetings are usually more greater depth, easier to get their attention.
Okay, no, I appreciate that kind of summary. Yes, go ahead, Alvin.
Thank you, Director. Can we reapply for some of those bonds or grants that we got before? Or
Yes.
are we out of it?
Well, so like the 19+ million, we're pretty much right under the cap. But as Roger showed, that there's some initiative to raise the cap to either 30 million or even 40 million. So we would still qualify. And once you're qualified, you remain qualified. So if we did pure water expansion or even, you know, a little bit more of a buy down on the phase 1 of pure water, we'd be in a position for those. We've actually applied for and should hear sometime in March on one of the fish grants, and those you qualify all the time. Some of the state Prop 1 monies, we've kind of tapped those out. Not because we don't remain qualified, but because we've kind of gotten our share and they're also starting to run out of money. So that's why we would need one of these new bond measures to pass and then get back in line and see what we could do there.
Okay, thank you.
I have another angle on a question angle. I think, Roger, you said something about shifting some part of NOAA over to Department of Interior. And I'm thinking about the Fish and Game. I think it's the Federal Fish and Game. I may have the wrong title of that.
Yeah, U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
U.S. Fish and Wildlife. it seems to me that we continue to face staff turnover, and that when there's some institutional knowledge that's valuable, then it gets lost when the turnover takes place, and then we're losing whatever traction that we may have created a year ago. We lose it, and it seems like there ought to be. I don't think you need to reorganize the federal government in order to address our problem, but that's an irritant, a very, very big irritant that I think we have.
Yeah, and Roger did say that it's pretty much dead on arrival,
Yeah.
or it might be.
Yeah.
But NOAA is our regulator, it's NIMFS. And so all of the, all of our permits, the people we pay for out of Santa Cruz, this arduous process of wrapping up the Los Padres Dam study and all of the additional requirements that were thrown on us, that was all NIMFS, National Marine Fisheries Service, which is under NOAA. So on the one hand, they've been a real pain for us, but on the other hand, they're very knowledgeable, and you might lose that with a reshuffle to Department of Interior.
I wasn't supporting a reshuffle. I was just addressing the frustration of slow progress, if any progress.
Right. Well, it's, there are with the changeover in the administrations, a lot of times there are changes even at the state level, regional level, and there is a big push to minimize that in this with the change, with the incoming Biden administration. So folks like Paul Souza, who is the state director there in California, covers that region that covers California for the Fish and Wildlife Service. There's certainly a lot of support for his retention, and a lot of the other similarly placed senior folks within the fishery-related agencies. But it's certainly an opportunity for change to occur, and sometimes that just happens, during these switchover of the administrations.
Yeah.
This has been very informative, and I'm going to ask the committee if they have any other questions to pursue. Otherwise, we'll move along. No more? Well, thank you both. I mean, thank you both, both federal and state, but thank you for your team, Roger. And it's nice seeing everybody. It's, even though, I don't know, probably wouldn't see you if we weren't through Zoom. That's the other thing.
That's right. Right. Absolutely. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, can we go, do we pick up on item 5, just a legislative outreach?
Yeah, and I apologize, but I had hoped to be on a 3:00 call, so I'll be relatively quick. But what you have in the staff note for item 5, well, actually, while I'm still here, John and Lori look like they're still on. I just wanted to highlight to John and Lori, we may have a problem with AB 377, which is our good friend Robert Rivas. So we'll talk more about that. But anyway, so moving on to item 5. This is a slightly updated advocacy plan for us. It's very similar to the prior 2 to 3 years. I think the focus remains kind of the same. It's challenging in the age of COVID. I mean, really, we used to go to city council meetings on a fairly regular basis, at least once or twice a year, showing up in person. We haven't really done that. We have not been going to the government affairs committees of MCHA or other, the business coalition. We don't know if that's because we haven't been invited now that the district's somewhat squarely behind Pure Water Monterey expansion or not. But yeah, some of the in-person activities have waned a little bit. But those groups and our interaction with those groups remains really important at the local level. I think on the state and federal level, because you have more contact at meetings like these with the Ferguson Group or JEA and Associates, you kind of know where those are headed. We do vary, as I mentioned earlier, between just simply monitoring legislation to periods where we actually need help, either regulatorily or with legislation, to periods where we're just chasing money. So I think this plan kind of keeps us on the right direction, and it would go to the board for quote unquote adoption on the consent calendar, probably next month. Just so all the board members can kind of see what the guidance is for ledge advocacy for the year.
Well, and just as maybe a warning, if we go into a strategic goals workshop, we need to be careful about what's on that agenda because we can go down a lot of rabbit holes if we're dealing with legislation.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
And apparently nobody wants to support legislation to make it easier to do eminent domain. So Mark Stone referred to that as another of the third rails of government. So.
Well, Dave, I know you got a 3 o'clock, but can one of our consultants help us with the state when it comes to it? We're gonna have to weigh something in the future. And I think we're gonna need some good direction. I look at 75 acre feet versus 1,000 acre feet.
Yeah.
And where we gonna go with it. So I just wanna keep them in mind.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to decide.
Right. No, and John and Lori have been tasked to do some of this housing work, which is just all primarily regulatory, not legislative. And then the 1,000 acre foot, as we talked about a few days ago, it's really, the big concern of the state board is, can the community get its act together to comply with the post December 31, 2021 world? And we will be going to water supply planning in 3 weeks, I think it is, or 2 weeks, with discussion of that issue as well, because that would be the one where if the company can't comply because either the plumbing doesn't move water where it needs to go, or they're just too close to being on the edge, then we would likely need, to basically come full guns blazing. So.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure we keep them in mind of what's going on.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, and then just if I can add, you had 75 and 1,000 acre feet. I'm going to throw 7 in, just a small number like 7, because the affordable housing idea I thought was a pretty decent idea, but as long as the state water board is going to hang over our shoulders threatening us, then we can't even do something with 7 acre feet.
Yeah.
Thank you, George. Thank you.
We lose and then we lose and then we lose. So
That's right. So we got this community got to make a decision where we're gonna go, what we're gonna fight.
Yep.
You're
And the
on the
city
right
of
track.
Monterey, we had to call the city of Monterey on, I don't know, Thursday last week. And they're preparing to go in parallel with us. That's why I'm trying to get this draft letter out to Hans Uslar to review where we're kind of headed. But we're there at this point. We're going to make the formal ask, and that's where you're going to find out whether it's 7 or 75, whether there's any interest whatsoever. Even though they've said they understand the problem, that doesn't mean they're going to help solve the problem.
That's right.
And then the state talks out of both sides of its mouth to us. I mean, so to local agencies. So.
Yeah.
Well, okay. All right. I don't know if there's any other items to be discussed specifically. Are there any other items, any ideas that the committee has to place on a future agenda?
Well, no, just a question about this legislative advocacy plan. Where does this go next? Or are we going to be discussing it before it goes to the board?
Well, normally I think we probably would have put it as an action item, and somehow I failed to look at it carefully and put it in discussion. And so that would have been that's what we've done every year about this time previously. So we could pull it back and put it on as action for the March. Oh, we don't have to see, we meet quarterly for LegCom. So our choices are put it into either action or consent for the board, pull it from consent, talk about it. But otherwise it's just kind of a roadmap.
I prefer you make it an action item if we don't have too much on the board, so they can, instead of pulling it from consent.
Yeah.
Just make it an action item. I know we got the packet. Maybe we can add it at the board meeting.
Yeah, or do it in March.
Or move it to March. Just move it to March and that won't hold us up.
Yep.
Well, I'm okay with going forward the way it's been discussed. I have no items to put on the agenda for a future agenda.
We'll find you some.
Things may occur to me.
I think we're gonna have some.
Yep.
All
All
right,
right, then.
if there are no other additions or comments from anyone, I'm gonna, one last time for the public, if there's anybody out there that I don't know if there are, but if anybody raises their hand, we'll recognize them in the next 10 seconds.
No, just John and Lori.
All right. Well, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
all.